I want to welcome y'all to another episode of Friday Night Live with me, Pastor Frank. As always, I'm so excited that you all decided to join me on this Friday night. Listen, do me a favor as y'all are tuning in. Don't forget to hit, if you haven't done it already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that little notification bell so that you can make sure that you stay up to date, so that you stay current anytime I go live or post a new video. I don't know about you all, but as always, is anybody grateful that God saw you through to the end of another week? I know I am, and I would imagine that you are too, especially here in Chicago. It was 80 degrees outside. You all. Let me just pause right there for a minute because my sinuses and allergies have been off the chain. I don't know about you, but like I mean, woke up this morning, it was all dreary out, and even to the point that we'll start hearing rumblings and thunder. Didn't know what was going on. The next thing I know, it's 80 degrees outside. It's summertime, right? Already. We just skipped spring and just jumped straight to summer. But we know Chicago weather because in a couple of days I saw that we supposed to be getting some snow. So yeah, we know what it is. But listen, I digress. Is anybody glad to be alive on this Friday? I don't know about y'all, but it's been a lot of stuff going on in the news. And listen, I'm always grateful. Look, that God still chooses to bless me. That God still chooses to wake me up. That God still chooses to allow me to enjoy a brand new day. Right, today's a day that none of us have ever seen before, and I'm always grateful. And I know you are too. Listen, as always, you all do me a favor if you haven't already, I said it already, but I'm gonna say it again. If you haven't hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, make sure you do that. But then also don't forget to share this with somebody else, right? Don't forget to share it. Don't be stingy. Share the love, right? Let other folks know that we live, that we're on the air right now. Let folks know that we getting ready to get it in for the next few minutes, and then we're gonna try and get out and enjoy some of this weather before it changes. But as all we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. We started a four episode series called Love Talks, right? And in that first episode, let me just grab my notes real quick. In the first episode, we started out talking about the importance of being able to make sure that we know how to effectively communicate how I love or express our love to others. What's up, Nidra? Right? And then after that, then we moved into making sure from a foundational standpoint that we all understood what the elements of love are as according to God, right? And even at the end of that particular episode, we kind of touched on tonight's topic a little bit, which was the capacity to love, right? If you remember, we ended last week's episode coming to the realization that based on all of the elements that God says makes up love, right? Everybody, we ended last week understanding that everybody does not have the capacity to handle or manage all of those things, right? And so that's where we pick up today. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8 again, just for foundational purposes, so we have that fresh in our mind, right? I'm not giving us an idea I'm not making up my own version of love, right? We're not going based on your auntie and your uncles and your grandma and your grandpa and all. We ain't going on nobody else's description of what love is. We the only person whose idea of love that we're subscribing to is God's, because He is the creator, He is the author and finisher of this thing called love. And so, First Corinthians, I'm gonna read from the NIV. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered." It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. You are, and that all of these things, all of these adjectives that God used to describe what He considers to be love. I know we mentioned it last week, but I read that, reread that, because I want to make sure, right? And I don't want to assume that everyone even understands the term capacity to love. So I'm gonna spend some time trying to make sure that we understand what it means when we use the term capacity to love, and then I'm gonna spend some time trying to break down some of the nuances to help us understand why that's important. And so, by definition, the capacity to love refers to a person's, watch this, ability to experience, express, and or maintain a healthy love as defined by God, which is important because our capacity determines the depth that we're able to give or receive love. Remember, I gave the example last week. This cup that I drink from, this is a 20-ounce cup, right? So when it comes to capacity, this cup, the capacity is 20 ounces. But if I fill this 20-ounce cup up to the brim till it's full, and I then poured it into a 12-ounce cup, the fact of the matter is, I don't care how you feel, I don't care what you think. The truth is, the facts are, when I pour these 20 ounces into a 12-ounce cup, that means once it get to 12 ounces, what does that mean? That means it's going to be 8 ounces worth of whatever's on the inside that's going to fall to the ground. There's going to be excess 8 ounces that's going to be wasted. But it works in reverse also. I have 20 ounces. But if I have a 12-ounce cup and I pour what's in the 12-ounce cup into this 20-ounce cup, guess what? This 20 ounces is not going to be full. It's not going to be full to capacity. It'll have something, but it won't be full. And the reason, you all, in other words, the reason that's important, as I stated, is because our capacity, what we're just talking about, our capacity to love others was actually shaped by our experiences with love starting when we were little kids. In other words, we learned what loving relationships with family, with friends, or even with significant others. We learned what that looked like based on who we saw or what we saw modeled by the people around us, and especially model whoever the people that we looked up to the most, right? And you know what I mean by that. Some of us, we got a, even though we got a mom and daddy, some of us, some of us, we wasn't raised by mom and daddy. We was raised by grandma. But the point is, whether it was grandma, whether it was your favorite uncle, whether it was your favorite auntie, right? Even though everybody may have been trying to teach you something, we really locked on to certain people that we admired, that we looked up to because we thought they had it going on. So whatever they modeled before us, whatever we heard them saying, as it pertains to the love of family, as it pertains to the love of friends, as it pertains to the love of significant others, they were teaching us, you all. But here's the thing. They were teaching us, whether it was directly or indirectly, based on their own interpretation of what they considered love, which is actually how we got so many different versions or visions of love, because everyone was simply teaching based on what they knew. And that's why I thought it was important that we have this conversation as we're talking, having these love talks. Because if we're going to have any kind of conversation as it relates to love, we have to make sure that everything that we say is rooted and grounded, not in somebody else's opinion, right? But rooted and grounded in what God defines as love. And as I mentioned last week, based on God's description of love, we have to be honest with ourselves in recognizing that everyone that we connected with very well may not have the ability or the capacity to love us the way that God describes. And I know that can be a difficult thing to hear, right? Especially when we've invested time in certain friendships or certain romantic relationships. You don't have any control over family, right? But the things that we do have control of, we control who we decide to be friends with. We control who we decide to link up with or connect ourselves with romantically. And it's difficult to come to the realization that whoever it is that we love, it's a possibility that they may not be able to love us back. At least not the way that we need them to. Why? Not because they're a bad person. No matter what they may have went through in their life. I'm not saying that they're a bad person. What I'm saying is it's very much so possible that they may not have the capacity. They may not have the ability to give you what you need. Right? If you're a 20-ounce cup, but all they have is 12 ounces, all they can give you is 12 ounces. And vice versa. If you're 20 ounces and you're trying to love on them, but they're having difficulty accepting and handling all that you're pouring into them, because you got 20 ounces, they only got 12. Which means, you all, once we understand what a person's capacity is, we can't be mad at them if they're unable to give you more. Remember, the capacity to love refers to their ability to experience, express, and maintain healthy, loving relationships, which includes things like emotional availability, includes things like trust, compassion, forgiveness, and commitment, which are all things that we need if we're going to be able to love the way God describes in 1 Corinthians. And so, if you don't mind, I'm going to spend a little time to make sure that we're all clear on how the things I just mentioned, how they affect or shape all of our capacity to love. Is that all right? The first thing, emotional availability is what I mentioned. And what is emotional availability? That is our capacity to love involves developing strong emotional connections with others, which then shapes how close we feel, whether it's emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, or even socially. And that's important because watch this. If we're not emotionally available, then it becomes difficult to connect with other people, which obviously means then becomes difficult for other people to connect to us. Trust. Trust is a major part of our capacity. How well do we trust? When it comes to healthy relationships, our capacity to love requires the ability to trust others, and at times causes us to be vulnerable in relationships. Why? Because that actually helps to develop deeper levels of connection. But if we have trust issues, how can we expect to have a deeper sense of closeness or connectedness to the people we say we love? Compassion. Our capacity to love also forms or shapes our ability to understand and share the feelings, watch this, of others, and then act with compassion and kindness, which is a major part of any healthy relationship. If you're not able to be compassionate, that means you probably are not really able to be kind. But remember, that was one of the descriptions that God gave in First Corinthians. Love is patient and kind. You can't be kind if you're not compassionate. But then I also mentioned forgiveness. Remember, it says love keeps no record of wrongs, right? It covers a multitude of sins. Forgiveness, a healthy capacity to love, includes the ability, watch this, to forgive not only other people, but even to forgive yourself when you make mistakes, when you mess up, as well as, because watch this, when we're able to accept and forgive ourselves, when we're able to forgive others, that then allows us to be able to accept people as they are with all of their flaws. Now let me just throw this out there. I'm not saying that means be a fool, right? Because we talked about that last week. We talked about the fact that when someone continues to make the same mistake over and over again, at some point that means they're making an intentional choice. Because if you keep doing the same thing the same way, expecting a different result, that's insanity. At some point in time, you should learn from the mistakes you made. But if a person is not learning from the mistake they made, they're making a choice, right? So forgiveness does not mean be ignorant. Forgiveness does not mean just not using wisdom and it don't matter what they do. No, it means using wisdom. Forgiving, right? You're not holding something over their head. But then I also mentioned commitment. Our capacity to love also includes the ability to make long-term commitments and to maintain stable, fulfilling relationships. Ah, we're gonna talk about the fellas for a minute because one of the main things that I often hear women say, and as they complain about the guy that they're dating or that they're interested in, is these guys don't seem to they seem to have an issue with commitment, right? They have commitment issues. They could, right? But if they have commitment issues, that also means they may not have the capacity to love you the way you need. Oh, I'm gonna just wait it out and ride it out. You can, but there's a way to go about how to loving someone, which we'll talk about that next episode. But I'm not saying that you don't give someone a chance to get right. I'm not saying you don't give someone a chance to do what they need to do to work on expanding their capacity, because it is possible. But again, we don't talk about that next episode. But here's the reality. In order to build and have a healthy relationship, we have to be able to commit. That's whether it's a friendship, family, right, or even romantic relationships. Every healthy relationship has to be able to have individuals in that relationship that have the ability or capacity to commit. And especially now, I'm gonna just go there, especially as it pertains to romantic relationships, right? Especially when you're talking about dating for the purpose of marriage, because marriage is supposed to be a forever thing, right? That's long term, which means you need to be finding out, does the person that you're interested in have the capacity to commit long term? I'm gonna save some. I was gonna say something. I'm gonna hold it for another time, but you have to be able to commit. And I believe you all that it was important for us to have this particular conversation, because when we're choosing to connect with people, I'm really not sure that we're really paying attention to some of these nuances, especially when it comes to love and romance. But then we seem to wonder why the people we choose never seem to work out. Now, I'm not gonna get into well, women ain't supposed to choose. Yeah, y'all know what I mean, right? Well, it's gonna take us down a rabbit hole, Nisha. So that's a whole nother episode. I'm gonna tell you about it. But here's the thing: we often wonder why relationships, whether it's a friendship, but especially romantic relationships, why they never seem to work out. I mean, they look the part. They seem like they got everything that you wanted. They checked off every box on your checklist, or so you thought. Then it appears out of nowhere. Here come crazy. Right? But I believe you all, the reason this conversation in particular was so important, because I wonder, just go with me. I wonder what would happen if we actually took the time after we noticed that initial spark, especially if it's a romantic friendship, right? I wonder what would happen if we took the time after that initial vibe with somebody who we feel like, man, that's a good friend, right? They got a vibe that I feel like I could rock with. Whatever that initial connection might be with someone, I wonder what would happen if we first asked God to reveal to us everything we need to know before we connected with them, right? Because let's be honest, a lot of times we say, "Oh God, I thank you." We just automatically, when we see a person's initial vibe, we start thanking and praising God, like, "Man, God knew what I needed," right? But was it really God that sent them? Just because it looked good, don't mean that was sent by Him. We talked about it earlier in one of the other episodes. Y'all do remember, distractions don't look like distractions until after you've been distracted. Hello, somebody. Distractions are going to look like what you're looking for. It's not going to come in the form of somebody saying, I'm going to waste your time for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. No. It's going to come looking like what you've been looking for. Which is why I'm asking the question. I wonder what would happen if we asked God first to reveal to us, number one, did you send them? And if you did send them, because you're right, Nija, All of us got a little crazy in us. But here's the thing. If we ask God to reveal to us everything we need to know, he will lead us and guide us and help us navigate that relationship. But far too often, we assume that it was God because it checks off all of our boxes. And then we find ourselves crying to God on the back end, trying to figure out what went wrong, what went left, how did this fall apart. But I just wonder, you all, what would happen? Maybe, just maybe if we sought God and asked God first to reveal to us everything we need to know, maybe we might save ourselves some heartache and some pain, or even some just flat out headaches and stress. Maybe we'll save ourselves to keep ourselves from another failed relationship. Watch this. And some of us really need this because we older. Maybe we might avoid investing time, energy, and effort into the wrong people. Or I'm gonna be honest. Or maybe you just might realize that you the one that actually has whose capacity is actually limited, right? Because once you begin to ask God to reveal to you all that you need to know, he may start pointing out, no, it ain't them, it's you. They 20 ounces, you the 12 ounces. You need to expand your capacity. Or he very well may show you their capacity is limited. Don't go down there. Now, another caveat, and I'm gonna talk about it more next episode. There is a possibility that someone may not have the capacity or ability to love you the way that God designs right now, but they may have potential. Now, you don't marry potential, right? You don't go off potential, but potential is good. But guess what? How do you know when to go off potential? God will tell you. But if you don't ask him, he can't tell you, right? But the reality is, and I'm being honest, there are some people that are able. And let me back up. Let me say this a different way. We're all able. The question is, are we willing, right? We all have the ability to expand our capacity, right? By allowing God to expand our capacity. But the question is, are we willing to go through and do what's necessary to allow God to expand our capacity? But are we willing to wait and ask God first and wait for him to then show us? I gotta be honest, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. That's I would imagine that's why God designed sex to be in the context or confines of marriage. Because once we start having sex with somebody, our emotions are all over the place. Once we start having sex with someone, we emotionally, we don't see no red flags. And the ones that we do, we kind of cover them up and shade them. Now, in theory, that might not be a bad thing. Why? Because what do we say? Love covers a multitude of sin. Love does not keep track of any wrongs. But in the context when we're talking about sex, all of that applies to your spouse. You should be able to cover your spouse's sins, right? Because you're emotionally connected to them. That's the purpose of sex within marriage. Not only for it to feel good, but for you to become connected. But here's what happens. Many of us get connected with people who don't have the capacity to love us back, but yet we sleeping with them. And we're blind, yet we blinded by that flesh and can't figure out what's wrong. Baby, he don't have the capacity to love you. You too crazy. You don't have the capacity to love him. But you can't see that you need to separate. You can't see that y'all need to go y'all separate ways because you blinded by your emotions. I'm trying to help us, y'all. I'm trying to help us, y'all. Because here's the thing. There's so many people that have been playing house. There's so many people that have gotten themselves linked up with people who as they consistently are at trying to figure out, I mean, racking their brain because you're trying to figure out what's so hard about loving me the way that I need to be loved. I mean, I told you what I needed. I told you what I wanted. If you just do what I asked, guess what? They can't give you what they don't have. You want more. They don't have more to give. But you're too blinded to see it and you still holding on. Y'all ain't got to look at me with that tone of voice. Ouch. I know it's difficult to hear you all. But here's the thing. I wonder what it would look like again if we sought God, if we prayed and asked God first. Reveal to us everything we need to know about this person before we get connected to them. Because watch this, either way, I believe you all, once we begin to take inventory of not only them, us, right? We got to check ourselves. Because either way, you all, as we continue on this journey to dreaming unfiltered and experiencing better days, it just might be that much more enjoyable once we're able to connect with the right people who actually have the capacity to love us the way God intended. So here's the thing. As we getting ready to kick off this weekend, I want to encourage each and every one of you, even the people who come back and watch this on the replay, take some time, spend some time first reflecting on your own capacity to love. And what are we basing your capacity on? Remember, we're basing your capacity on what God says entails love. Do you struggle with being patient? Do you struggle with being kind? Right? Are you one of those people who you hold a grudge, right? Meaning you have an issue and you struggle with forgiving people. You can't keep a record of the wrong if you say you love them. I'm just saying. So first reflect on your own capacity to love. Take note, jot down what it is that you might be struggling with. And if you still are unsure, ask God to reveal it to you. Then begin to pay attention to the people around you to determine if they even have the ability to love you or the capacity to love you back. Well, listen, that's all I got for us on tonight. I thank y'all for tuning in. I pray that something that we said on tonight blessed you or someone was blessed by this conversation. As always, I look forward to seeing you all next Friday night live as we gonna continue this conversation for the last episode of this Love Talk series, discussing how to love. Because we talked about making sure that we know how to effectively communicate. We talked about what the elements of a healthy love are based on God's description. We now and today we spoke about capacity, trying to understand and recognize whether or not we even have the capacity to love the way God says, or whether the people around us have the capacity. But next week we're gonna talk about if you have the capacity, or even if you don't, we're gonna discuss how do you love? How, according to God, how should I love? Well, until next week, remember you all, dreams plant the seeds for the future, and your future is definitely bright. And I see a lot of love in it. Until next week. Love y'all. Peace out.